Hello and welcome to Classics Confidential. I'm Anastasia and today we're talking with Angelique, composer. And we are actually talking about music that you wrote, so new music that you wrote for a production of Euripides Bacchae in a modern version. So tell us what drew you to the project.
Well, actually, the playwright who wrote this, her name is Samara Weiss, and we met at a Columbia lyric lab where I set one of her lyrics to music, and we worked very well together. So we thought, what else can we do? So she sent me, she had actually already written a version of her play, so she sent it over to me, and I thought, what fun, this would be great. So we started working on it. It was a student production, so the one thing with the students is to find out what your resources are.
Indeed.
So that told me, okay, what instruments can I use? Are we going to have musicians? Are we not going to have musicians at all?
Yes, a very important part of the whole
yes.
process, of course. What musicians you have and what instruments can they play.
Exactly.
And then you tailor, I presume, the music to the ability of the students.
Exactly. So what the songs that she had written for the play, there are about 6 songs, and they're mostly for the chorus, the maenads, and there is 2 songs for Dionysus. And so I thought drumming, the chorus could drum. So I wanted to use
percussion.
I wanted to use them to their best, to use every resource I had. So good way would to actually use the chorus on stage. So I used drumming, and obviously they're singing. And
were they dancing as well?
They were dancing, they were moving.
Wow.
And the other, and I used just one melodic instrument, which is the flute, which I thought...
were you inspired perhaps by the use of ancient musical models?
That's interesting, because I would say if I could re-orchestrate it, I would actually add a string instrument, probably a guitar, which is the easiest to get. But the production itself was very interesting. It's a loose adaptation, and the modern it really fuses. For example, Pentheus is a guy in a business suit and a briefcase.
Yes, I saw from the production. So
yeah.
It looked very modern, and also it was done outside.
Yes, and that was another reason that affected the orchestration. What can you transport that's easy, that's outside?
And is also audible,
exactly.
in a space with competing noises,
exactly. So that was a big factor in choosing those instruments. It's interesting because a lot of shows, even on Broadway now, the actors play instruments and act. Yeah. So in an ideal production, I would have loved that. I would love to include some of this, having the actors play instruments. I think melodically it's interesting. I didn't want to base it too much on
ancient models.
Yes, I mean,
was there influence by Western music, perhaps?
Sure, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the folk music, Greek modern music influenced me most melodically. It's interesting, we just had the panel of Theodorakis, but what I grew up with, for example, the melodies of Theodorakis and Angelique, that songs that are actually, when I did, while I was growing up, I did not know who the composer was, but the aesthetic, the melodic aesthetic, it's inside of me, and I think this naturally came out when I was writing these songs.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because modern Greece claims special relationship with ancient Greece, and part of that conversation is the connection with ancient Greek music, which sort of appears thematically, I think. So, I mean, obviously Theodorakis makes that claim, doesn't he? Which brings us, I think, naturally to another half of your working life, which is you wrote this wonderful book about Mikis Theodorakis finding Greece in his music. What drew you to this project?
Well, I was actually doing a master's in music composition in South Africa, and I was writing my composition portfolio, and I did not know what to write for my thesis. And it was a very interesting
One should never admit that, perhaps, even if it's true.
But I must say, it was an interesting time in South Africa because it's post-apartheid, and a lot of the work that students were doing was about identity, finding identity. Who are we? What is our place in this world? So I turned to modern Greek identity, and I saw Theodorakis, as I knew him then when I first started, was the embodiment of modern Greek music. And I wanted to, after reading and researching him, I did not know he wrote symphonies and operas. I had no idea. So I just was, I went back to my roots, and that's what drew me to his work.
And of course, Theodorakis, one of the key ways in which he creates modern Greek identity in his work is through this connection with ancient Greece.
Yes.
So what did you discover as you researched him?
Well, basically that he always mentions that the word dragudi for song is the word for tragedy, and that it's important to him that it literally means ode to the goat. So it's sung to Dionysus. So he, throughout his work, he affirms this connection to the tragic. Like in a sense, he saw all of his songs as tragedies, and how they communicated with Greece. He saw them as this nation chorus, and he hoped to continue this dialogue, this new dialogue, bringing the poetry and music of the people, this dynamic dialogue, throughout his career. As we spoke about in the panel, unfortunately in the operas, that dialogue did not continue because the language of the opera, it was not the language of the people. Opera is...
Yes, it's perceived as elitist, and I think there is a barrier there for modern audiences, particularly I think for modern Greek audiences who are not really used to opera.
Yes, we don't know. Hopefully, in time there will be there will be a change, but he's always had this relationship to the tragic, and also to he also talks about these ancient shadows, living under these ancient shadows.
It's a wonderful image, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an amazing image.
And I think sometimes some modern Greek artists feel the past as a bit of a burden, because there's all this expectation. I think Safaris talked about, how do you compete with Homer? But I think with Theodorakis, it's a much more organic process.
Definitely. I mean, simply is like, what is a tree without roots? And the roots of the Greek culture, he believes are the ancient traditions. And he also he strongly believes that if we do not keep these roots intact, then the culture will deteriorate, and we have to keep on keep this connection alive, and do not. He uses the word demythologizing with the in the modern times where technology has overtaken the world, we don't want the demythologizing of our, of our culture. So it's very interesting, the connections he makes, and
he finds really inspiration in this connection rather than feeling it's a burden.
Definitely, yes, he does. It's quite natural. I mean, he says, you see the Parthenon right there. Just, how can you not make a connection? And what a connection to make. As Gail was saying, the connection works for the people, and if it works, why not?
And I mean, you also make the same connection because you wrote music for a modern revival of Euripides Bacchae. So you're carrying on the dialogue as well.
I never thought of that.
And I think it's very important, isn't it, to bring and to create new versions of antiquity. To the modern stage, whether it's operatic or theatrical or other performative aspects.
And that's interesting because the way Samara tackles this piece, it's about it from the point of view of Pentheus, like forgetting the history, and it's about do you forget and move on, or do you can a play survive by forgetting where it comes from or the history? So that's very interesting in that way. I didn't make the connection with myself writing this, but
I think it's, in a way, it works better if it's not an overly conscious connection. And definitely. I think Theodorakis manages that balance really well.
Definitely, it's all inside of him.
It's not artificial. At least it doesn't really feel artificial.
Yes, definitely. I sometimes the breadth of his work, his personality is not overwhelming, but it's so vast that because he embodies the history and the culture. His life and works are a narrative of the history of modern Greece in a way, and as you said, he imbues the ancient philosophy throughout his work, and it all makes sense. Nothing is contrived. It makes complete sense, and it's beautiful. So
I think our message today is, if you don't know who Mikis Theodorakis is, maybe go and find out. There's lots of clips of his music on YouTube. So here we are doing our little plug and taking the message out. Thank you very much, Angelique, for coming and speaking with us today.